Greetings, innovators and leaders. This is AI for the C-Suite, your compass for navigating the exponential age. I'm your host, Chad Harvey, and we're here to bring you cutting-edge insights on AI tailored specifically for middle-market organizations. Buckle up as we embark on a journey through the transformative world of artificial intelligence. Today, I am delighted to welcome Nathan Whittacre, founder and CEO of Stimulus Technologies. Nathan is a true technology pioneer with a fascinating journey that began in childhood when he mastered basic programming on an Atari computer and ran his first business, a candy store, at just 11 years old. In 1995, he founded Stimulus Technologies, which has grown into a leading managed service provider in Las Vegas, helping hundreds of small to mid-sized businesses implement practical tech solutions. With both a bachelor's and master's degrees in computer science from the University of Nevada, Las Vegas, Nathan has witnessed the evolution of AI from its academic origins to today's transformative applications. He recently completed MIT's course on artificial intelligence, implications for business strategy, and authored the Amazon best-selling book, The CEO's Digital Survival Guide. What makes Nathan's perspective particularly valuable is his hands-on experience helping over 600 business clients in the lower middle market understand how to use AI today while preparing for tomorrow. When he's not transforming business through technology, Nathan enjoys outdoor adventures with his 5 children, marathon running, and flying, hopefully in a plane. Nathan, welcome to AI for the C-Suite.
Thanks, Chad. It's great to be here. It sounds like I know something. It's always funny to listen to your own bio being read.
It's kind of like listening to your own obituary sometimes, isn't it? You're like, wow, is that me?
Did I do all that?
Oh my gosh. Well, I'm excited to have you here, and I'm really excited for our conversation today. And let's just jump right in. As your bio indicates, you have worked with hundreds of small to mid-sized businesses. And I'm interested in knowing, just right off the gate, or out of the gate rather, what are you seeing as the most immediate practical applications of AI that middle market companies are successfully implementing today? Because this is the year where I'm starting to see we are moving from theory and idea to execution. So what's immediate? What's practical? What are you seeing out there?
Well, that's one of the things we've been talking to our clients about over the last 2.5 years is what can they do today? Because there's lots of pipe dreams and ideas that companies want to use AI to do. And some of the things have been able to be done with just basic automation and programming, custom programming. But it definitely is making it a lot easier using AI to accomplish these tasks. So we took a different approach or an easy approach for our clients, and we are a Microsoft partner on our IT services side, on our MSP side, and we embraced Microsoft's Copilot solution to be able to offer an immediate solution for these small to mid-sized companies to incorporate AI in different types of operations. So we're seeing a quick adoption by some of our clients. When we introduced this to a handful of clients over the last year, we've had some clients that have given it to all their employees, Copilot to all their employees, and ran with it. And other companies have taken a more measured approach, giving it to a few departments at a time. But they found, immediate use of it, by writing better emails, drafting better documents, and just better using the Microsoft suite tools that they currently have. So I think that's an immediate use for somebody that doesn't maybe know how to communicate with a, large language model like ChatGPT or write interfaces, use APIs and things like that. Using Copilot is a great way just for general business use to start using generative AI.
Yeah, Copilot is a good lever to pull, I think, right out of the gate. Are you finding that there are any specific departments or maybe even industries that are more quickly adopting some of the technology and more quick to utilize Copilot? Because one of the things I'm continually hearing from folks about Copilot is one of two things. Either one, companies are slow rolling the features because they're concerned about getting all the permissions right, or two, people just simply don't understand all the features and how to best leverage it. So back to my question, either industries or individual departments that you're finding are better suited to adopt and use this technology.
It's been all over the place. So one of the things that we did because we realized that there was a big training element. I mean, this is like 30 years ago when we were trying to train people how to use Microsoft Windows and get on the internet and write emails. It's nobody knows this. I find it funny, just a kind of an aside, is, if you pull up on the web AI experts and, there's thousands of people claiming to be AI experts that just, took a course, like I did. They say that they're experts in the industry. And I mean, I guess everybody can be an expert when the generative AI is a field that, from a use standpoint is only 2 or 3 years old. So as long as you've been using it for that long, I guess you can claim to be an expert. But um, it's I think the issue is there's just this training element, and we found that companies that are willing to invest in some training for their teams can leverage the tools quickly, and that expands adoption rates inside companies. And so, what we did is we created a master class that the employees can join that we moderate, and we have groups of about 15 or 20 people at a time that go through this 12-week course and we walk them through training on how to incorporate chat or I use ChatGPT quite a bit personally too, but Copilot inside their different tools. We spend a couple of weeks on Word, a couple of weeks on Excel, PowerPoint, Outlook, Teams. And, it's just a training element of learning how to navigate through using Copilot with that specific tool and how to write the correct prompts to get it to do what you want, because that's a big part of it too, is prompt engineering and understanding how to properly communicate with the generative AI solution. So I think training is a big part of it, and it can lead to adoption in different industries. So we have everything from manufacturers to professional service firms like attorneys that are incorporating ChatGPT in certain parts of their elements. So, our Copilot. Sorry, it's easier to say ChatGPT because I use that so often, but it is Microsoft Copilot that we're primarily, working with our clients with.
Gotcha. I want to ask you about the evolution of prompt engineering, but before I do, I had to laugh because when you talked about all the different folks that are holding themselves out as AI experts, I was on a call with someone that signed up as a client just last week, and they said, well, you're the third person that we've interviewed to come in and work with our company about generative AI. And the first two that we spoke with, this is a direct quote. She said to me, it sounded like they were chat GPTing their way through our conversation. We didn't have a high level of confidence. And I thought that was just fantastic. I'd not heard that before, but I had this visual image in my mind of somebody sitting over here trying to, fake their way through this. Yeah, I'm an AI expert. So in any event.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at a conference not too long ago, and there were a couple of speakers that held their hat out as a AI expert, and it was just they had read a couple of articles online and maybe been using ChatGPT on the side, but certainly there are AI experts. This is a field that's been around since the 1950s. It just has exploded in the last 3 years, and I think it has to be a discerning individual, a discerning company to work with an individual or a service provider that really truly does have some expertise. And there's not a lot out there. There's certainly a lot of people that have hung their shingle out saying something different, but you have to be discerning.
No, I like that. I like that word. You have to be discerning, and I would also say my experience in the marketplace has been that, to your point, that AI has been around since the 50s. There are a lot of really, really sharp technologists out there and researchers and folks that are doing cutting edge work. There's not a lot of folks yet that understand how to translate what's being done into practical applications for mid-market companies. I think it's that bridge that seems to be a little shaky right now, or at least not fully populated, if I was going to use that metaphor a little bit more. There's not a lot of people on that bridge. How about that?
I would agree with that 100% because there are a lot of very smart people that have incorporated AI into different systems. And you can read very interesting case studies, like, how credit card companies incorporated AI, 5 or 6 years ago, to do fraud analysis. I think that's a great case study on really an excellent use of AI to take large data sets and identify fraud in better ways than any type of programmatic solution could do it. So there's been a lot of research and a lot of implementation by large corporations. What's really cool now is because generative AI has come down to the masses and computing technology is, the hardware is available for us to use it. It's now anybody's game as long as we're willing to invest the time and money and really get some people to walk us through the journey to get us there.
Yeah. Well, and I do want to ask you about investing time and money. But before I do that, I did say I had a question about prompt engineering for you. I don't do a lot of work within Copilot. I tend to work generally directly with some of the frontier models, the Chat GPTs, the Claudes, et cetera, et cetera. So what I've noticed is that there's been an evolution, especially in the last 4 to 6 months, over the way that you need to prompt or work with these systems. And I'm wondering if you're seeing that similar evolution within Copilot. And if so, how have things changed?
I think in all these systems, as the language model evolves, it definitely we're learning how to better adapt and react to the way that the language model works. And because, Copilot is based off of ChatGPT and their models, it's a little delayed, in their model usage, but way that you incorporate and work with Copilot is going to be similar to ChatGPT. Um, and sometimes it doesn't give you the information you want or doesn't do exactly what you want. And I think, it's very interesting as, we've been working with it for about a year now. We're finding that, from day to day, it changes even too. They're certainly rapidly fixing issues and sometimes they break things too. So what worked, a prompt that worked yesterday will may not work today. And that's a frustration for the users, and we have to explain that to our clients that there is a learning curve and we're on the forefront of this technology, and so sometimes some patience is involved in it too.
I think that counseling patients is always a good idea with these tools because you're right. Things change day to day. Sometimes they break. You see, there's been an interesting thing I've noticed recently. I use Perplexity a lot for research. And when I do deep research, and I've seen this in one or two of the other tools as well, occasionally it'll say to you, I'm now thinking in English, or I'm thinking in a different language about this problem. And I think that that's absolutely fascinating. All right, in any event, I said I was going to ask you about time and money. So, time and money. One of the themes that continually surfaces is that leaders are overwhelmed by possibilities, but they're constrained by budget and time and expertise. Do you have an approach that you find works well to help these companies start their AI journey without requiring a massive investment of cash or time?
I think it's deciding what the best bang for the buck of, inside their implementations. I can speak a little bit, to stimulus and what we're doing internally. I think, I'm a read my background, heavy into technology, computer science background. We used to provide programming services. We no longer do that. And so, I was very intrigued. And, as soon as ChatGPT came out, I was experimenting with it. Um, and, I'm finding that different ways that I use it as the owner of the company and being a technologist, I enjoy experimenting with it, is going to be very different than, let's say, my marketing manager
Right.
is using it. But what I found, like I'll use my marketing manager for an example, and we're gonna record a podcast a little bit later this morning about creating custom GPTs and inside of ChatGPT, specifically around marketing. She's taken some classes on it and learned a lot about how to incorporate, for example, a target client profile's voice and creating that target client profile and creating a GPT that's a writer around that target client profile, and then using that new custom GPT to write content for specific, client profiles that we're going after. So, if we have a sales letter we want to send out to prospects or an email, and that's going to be the same letter, but we're going to send it to lawyers or to accountants or to a manufacturing owner. The language that we use in there has got to be different because their problems are different. And so writing that custom letter for that specific target client is very effective. But it took probably about a week's worth of training on her part and some experimenting, and we're getting some results from it. But it did take some time and effort for her to learn how to use it, and back and forth with me on some experimentation on it. But it is looking for people that have gone down this path before. She's part of a group, mastermind group that she goes to every week for marketers, and she's learning from people that are going through this too. So I think, that's part of it because kind of going back to the initial comment, there's not a lot of experts, and we're all just trying to figure out, how to make it work inside our businesses. And I think that, being part of a mastermind group is maybe specific for that position will really help improve the outcomes. And understand that, maybe initially things will go slower. As a content writer, she probably could write that content, those sales letters individually to those target clients well. But once the GPTs are written, now I can produce, thousands of letters easily, or thousands of pieces of content that are very tailored to those individuals. And because we've made that investment up front, now we're seeing the results down the road. And it's very customized to, our business and our voice and how we do it. So the other thing I think from a business perspective, I think you have to have enough content that is your business to be able to feed into any of these models. It's very easy to see, businesses that are using, like your example before of, the consultant that's coming in that's just speaking ChatGPT, that content. But it's got to be your voice, and for us, it's been nice since you mentioned I wrote a book. I have 300 pages of my personal writing, what I wrote, how I write, and that's fully edited, and so I can load that into the model, and then things that I write and draft are in my language because it's learned from my language. And that's one of the nice things about Copilot, for example. If you have the security set up right and your environment set up right in SharePoint, it's going to read your company's documents and really understand how you process and work as a company, and then it's going to tailor fit its responses to you and your organization. I think for me, especially for small to mid-sized businesses, getting your data right first, getting and making these language models your own, um, and produce content that sounds like stuff that you would do beforehand.
Yeah. You said something I think that's really important. I want to talk about that for a moment. You talked about using Copilot, drawing on the organization's data and the information it has so that the system understands the way the company works as well as the tone of the individual that they're working with it. And my supposition here is that this is going to be step one for a lot of organizations. And step 2 or 3 down the road is going to be wholesale reinvention of process based on the capabilities of these tools. And we're not there yet, but I can see it coming. And I think that if you don't take step 1, it's not going to be impossible to take step 2 or 3, but I think it might be a lot more difficult. And I just wonder if you have any thoughts about that, because I know we're talking about an ill-defined future state of being here, but I can see that ill-defined future state of being out there as this kind of amorphous blob. I see it coming, and I'm just curious what your thoughts are on that.
Agree. I think that companies that are now investing the time that may be a cost to the company to get their data right, to figure out what things can be best automated or enhanced by AI are going to have a step above when we start incorporating these AI solutions into larger, whether it's line of business applications or, your processes, or maybe even replacing or in at least enhancing different parts of your business. But you really have to train these models well on the way that you operate as your business. Else, there's I'll give a silly example. We were making dinner the other day, and I made cauliflower, which is kind of white or beige, and we had rice, and then we had some chicken. And you looked on the plate, which was also a white plate, and it was just like a whole piece of, it's just white. And my wife says, "Well, that's a very monochromatic dinner." And I said, "Well, that's a great term because." What we don't want is we don't want all companies becoming monochromatic. You don't want everybody being beige.
Hmm.
And if you're not setting up these systems and training them to learn on how you operate and what you do and how you speak as a company, you're going to just be like the guy next door. And so, I think it's really important to customize what you're doing so that it's who you are as a company and you can differentiate still with your competitors and against your competitors.
Yeah. You raised another important point. You keep raising great points here, Nathan. This is a wonderful discussion. One of the other things I'm seeing is over the last, especially 90 to 120 days, and we're recording this mid to late April of 25. But over the last 90 to 125 days, one of the things I'm seeing is an absolute explosion of third-party AI applications that are built on the different models that are out there. And I think that there's danger there because in corporate world and SMB land, we've been down this path before with shadow IT, which I'm sure you're very, very familiar with. And I think, I think we've got a very real danger or possibility because I can't go a week without somebody asking me about this tool, that tool, and I can't keep up anymore. There's thousands of them out there, and they're not all going to survive. So in order to avoid shadow AI IT, say that's a tongue twister, how do you counsel your clients about what to do and what steps to take? And obviously Copilot is a part of that. I understand that you're coaching folks on that. But what do you do and how do you handle these situations when people are waving the newest shiny AI tool at you and saying, what do we do about this?
First thing is to define an HR policy inside your company. I encourage businesses to do that initially and really define what you're going to allow inside your business as far as AI. I'll take it a step even backwards. And what happened very quickly when ChatGPT came out to the market is everybody was, putting confidential information, not everybody, but a lot of people were starting to put confidential information into the model, and then the next iteration of the model produced a lot of confidential information that was up, that the previous model was trained on. I think we've learned our lesson a little bit on that, but some people haven't, and I see that that's still an issue that I would be concerned about if I was buying or using a tool that might be using another tool, and what is the relationship between those two tools, and what's the privacy likelihood of, the information that I'm putting into the first tool into the second language model. And I think that, a lot of companies, these startups, it's the wild, wild west with them. And so I would caution um, around building a good strategy that ensures that the company is dictating what tools and models are being used, and then ensuring that whatever software you're buying or tool that you're using is abiding by that same policy.
Yeah. I think that's really solid advice, and I'd like to go a little bit deeper, but in a separate direction on this topic. My observation has been that most companies are still not as prepared as they should be in terms of their cybersecurity efforts. I can't go anymore 3 or 4 months without someone I know or another coach that I know telling me about a company that had a vendor compromised, or a man in the middle attack, or some type of financial loss due to a cybersecurity issue. So when we're talking about AI, and you talked about policy and privacy, I think cybersecurity is another very critical consideration here. So, in your opinion, what are the most critical security considerations that a company should be addressing when they're implementing AI solutions?
I think that is an excellent question because, we when we started talking about cybersecurity, we kind of forgot about IT, just IT policies. And now we're talking about AI, and we've kind of forgotten a little bit about cybersecurity and IT policies. And so they go hand in hand. We could go down a big rabbit hole on this because AI, one, has opened up a plethora of opportunities for malicious hackers to use AI to generate very sophisticated attacks against organizations. So, the first thing I would really caution any business on is your phishing emails, spear phishing, very targeted attacks on organizations are getting better and faster just because AI makes it much easier for hackers to gather large amounts of information on organizations and develop a very sophisticated attack. Um, so that's, first broad caution is AI is a great tool that attackers are using.
I'm glad to
Second
hear
thing
you. I'm
is,
going to interrupt you real quick. I'm really glad to hear you call out spearfishing as your first point, because I don't think a lot of folks are aware how cheap those attacks have now become and how personalized they can be. Whereas before it might have been a Fortune 500 or 1,000 executive that was at risk for that. Now it's anybody in a middle market company. So I'm just kudos for calling that out, and I wanted to highlight that for the audience. Sorry to interrupt you, but I think that's an important point that you just made.
yeah, I think it's very interesting. I was talking to a speaker on Wednesday of this week, and he got hit by a spear phishing attack. I mean, he's just a speaker, and it was a spear phishing attack. It looked very legitimate because, they had gathered information on the types of speaking events that he had done. Um, where he goes, learn, they liked international speaking just because of, scouring LinkedIn profile, maybe some other events that, he was tagged on the internet. And a very, very good spear phishing email came in inviting him to an event. And, he didn't go down the rabbit hole too far about, where that would have led from a fraud standpoint. Um, but it was a very, very good attack. And
Mm-hmm.
there was a couple of things that made him question it, with right off the bat. But it was interesting, to see that. So I think the threat is a lot higher today. Um, and we have to implement better tools to protect against it. So some type of AI solutions to analyze emails coming in, the way that you're drafting your emails, so, types of emails you have coming in, and you know, making sure that these attacks can't get through to you, because I think as humans, we're going to have a harder time distinguishing between legitimate communications and AI generated attacks. So, big caution there. I think the second caution is because AI needs a lot of data, and it builds these statistical models around data. It incorporates, all the data potentially inside your organization into, hopefully a private model, private database or private statistic model that it generates. Protecting that, I think, becomes even more essential than even protecting the end data, because from that model, it could produce, whatever, the way that you do your business. It isn't just the information about your business. It's really how you do business. And it becomes, an executive or an administrator or, a manager inside your company. However, you operate, it knows everything, probably more than your people do. If it if it has all your data. So it's really, really important to for us to protect those models and ensure, then going back to what you were saying before, ensure that we're using systems and tools that are going to keep our data private. And I think a lot of companies are now investigating the idea of private AI versus using these public tools and developing their own internal solutions. And they're becoming cheaper and cheaper to do. I haven't, we don't help people do that. It's just from my research online, I'm finding that companies are investing more and more into that just because there's this big concern.
Hmm. Is is there a balancing test that you can universally apply, or is there a conversation that you are able to have on a fairly regular basis with your clients that is going to help them weigh the benefits of AI against the potential security risks and navigate that? I would imagine it looks different in most situations from company to company, but I'm wondering if there's any through lines there or any advice that you can give our listeners.
I think it's, you need to work with your compliance team. I think this is a compliance question too. There's different frameworks of compliance that companies have to abide by. And then you have to rank your data. If you're a law firm, let me use that as an example, and y your case data, you have to, on your clients, you have to protect it, to the utmost of your ability, because it could be life and death, it could be related to, somebody having a mistrial or being convicted if this information got out. I think it's, the question is, what's the damage to the company and to your clients if this information was released? And that's kind of the litmus test between it. Some things are life and death really with this data. And so, in that instance, maybe not use AI or have a private AI solution for that data. Whereas, if you're just generating marketing material that will always be in the public's eye anyways, probably not as big a deal. If somebody steals my PowerPoint presentation that I'm going to give in a webinar next week, not as big a deal because I'm releasing it anyways, to the public. So not quite as big a deal. But, if there's, health records that are bound under HIPAA, for example, if you, bound like under CMMC for Department of Defense contractors, if you have financial data or PII, if you have case data for attorneys, whatever it may be, there's regulatory requirements. I think we have to be far more careful in protecting that data, and you certainly shouldn't be loading it into a general public AI system that has no end user license agreements to protect your data. So I talk to your compliance team and figure out what data is most important and how you should be protecting it anyways.
Always solid advice. Talk to your compliance team. Let's shift gears here a little bit and let's talk about common misconceptions about AI. I'll give you an example. I'm getting ready to deliver a keynote in a few weeks, and my keynote is focusing on the different gaps that are out there. And one of the gaps is, I think, a conception gap or a perception gap, if you will, between what is possible and what is capable and what the current state of the technology actually is. So I'll give you a very easy for example. For example, I find a lot of leaders may have dabbled with AI at some point in the last year or so, didn't get the result that they wanted, and then they never went back. They're like, it's just, not doing what I want it to do. Well, there's reasons for that. But be that as it may, that's a misconception about AI, that it just won't do what we want it to do, whatever that it is. So what are some of the most common misconceptions that you're encountering from executives? And are you finding that they potentially hold companies back from the AI journey that they need to go on?
Think it goes two ways. I think that there's a fear from the staff, one, that their job's going to get replaced. You can pull up headlines day after day, AI is going to replace paralegals, AI is going to replace programmers, AI is going to replace X, what, and so there's this general fear that AI is somehow going to replace these positions inside of companies, wholesale replacement. And maybe we'll get there for some positions. Certainly, I think if you look over the last 100 years, there's a lot of positions inside of businesses that are either replaced or the quantity of those positions are reduced dramatically. And I think from the executive standpoint, I think there's this misconception on the opposite side is, oh, if I can just get this random tool to work, I can, save millions of dollars a year by replacing those people. So I think that's part of the problem. I think another misconception is, AI is just to generate sales and marketing material. That's what I think the sales and marketing departments jumped on this first. It's like, oh, content creation, help with digital marketing, how to generate ads, things like that, videos. Uh, it's great stuff. I mean, it's some incredible stuff. I used the example of how we're using it internally earlier. Um, but it isn't, I don't think right now it's wholesale replacing, teams or employees. And it requires a certain level of expertise to be able to run this. I mentioned that I have a programming background. One of the things that I do because I don't program day to day anymore, I haven't for about 15 years, maybe even 20 years. I'm a little rusty on coding. Now I know programming well. I did it for a long time. But I use it to enhance my ability. So if I need to write some code, I can, ask the system, whatever I'm using, to assist me. I generate a concept of what I want to do, say, help me write this function, and then I'll modify it to what I need. I'll have it help me do research, pull up API documentation, for example, and just do research on that type of stuff or data transformation. But I don't think an executive or somebody that's not familiar with programming could just tell ChatGPT, write me some code to develop a new customer order entry system for my website. Go. It's not going to do that. You have to have a team that, uses it, but it's an enhancing tool to positions today. And it's pretty amazing. I mean, I did some data transformation work that I needed to do internally. It might have taken me 6, 8 hours to write the code. I got it down to an hour, because it just, or I could have had somebody manually do this data transformation, and it probably would have taken a week's time for somebody to do it. So, it's definitely a time saver if you know how to use it, if you've invested the time to effectively use these systems.
Mhm. Since you talked about coding and software development, beyond the baseline coding and the guts of what makes software work, given how fast this technology, and this technology being AI technology, generative AI technology specifically, has matured, what do you think that means for the development of future software applications and the software industry in general?
I think it's going to rapidly accelerate. I mean, I think those most experts are saying that too, because it's such an enhancing tool. Um, we're very smart people that have good concepts can use this to just exponentially enhance their ability to, write new systems, debug problems, and solve bigger issues. So I think it's going to be an exponential increase. Now, as with most things, I've had my company for 30 years now, and it's taken uh, 25 years of being a very small company and the last 5 years of seeing a rate of growth far faster than what we had in the first 25 years. But most people don't see the first 25 years of, 20-hour days. And, I was, working late at the office, and, they look at me now and say, well, you go on all these adventures and do these races and travel the world. That's pretty amazing, but they don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that came with it. And I think, that's with AI too. We have to realize, the concept of AI started in 1956. It was a research idea for, 40 years, started getting some, you know, uh, grounding in large corporations in the early 2000s. And only people realize or think about, wow, ChatGPT came out 3 years ago. That's so fast, but they don't see the 70 years of research and development that came before it. And, it's just that tipping point that is, I think it's going to accelerate faster. It's just interesting to see these things.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I couldn't help but recall the old saying when you were talking there, I worked my entire life to become an overnight success. Maybe to frame it a little differently in terms of technology and AI, I think what you've just outlined lends credence to the idea that there will be a flywheel effect, that once we get a certain level of X spun up, whether it's individually or collectively, and once the technology matures and is known to be useful in a certain way, then we'll see a massive, kind of a propulsion forward in terms of abilities, capabilities. That's what came to mind when you were talking there. So,
I think we're already seeing that to a certain aspect. It it's the beginning of it. I think we're seeing the beginning of the acceleration of it. What I think that's going to be interesting over the next year or so is software vendors are going to start figuring out how to use AI inside their solutions better. And I think it's going to, especially for the SMB and lower middle market companies, where I think we're going to see a big growth is not by the companies themselves implementing AI solutions, but the software solutions and the products that they're buying, maybe machinery incorporating AI, software line of business applications incorporating AI. I think I think it is going to be on a lot of us to look for new solutions and new vendors that are going to come to market or the existing incumbent vendors that are incorporating these solutions. And we're going to see an acceleration of the benefits of it as it's been being incorporated in the tools that we already use or, new software. And I'll just give an example for my industry. We're a managed service provider going back to the core IT solutions that we do, we just implemented a new what's called an RMM tool, which is a remote management and monitoring system for the endpoints, the computers that we work with. And historically, one of the problems that we've had is identifying which updates we should roll out to computers. I know that sounds really mundane, but holding back patches or forcing patches forward is kind of a big deal for us because we want to make sure that security updates are pushed out as quickly as possible to keep computers protected, but we don't want to push out ones that could cause damage to our end users. Like the year ago that CrowdStrike, Microsoft blue screen of death that took down like Delta Airlines, things like that. So that's one of the things that we do. The new tool that we just implemented has an AI solution that runs through new patches that are coming out with different software that we manage, and it does an analysis on it and predictively tells us which ones could cause problems with our clients based off of all the other software that they're running. And for one of our technicians or engineers to do that work, that takes hours a day to do that analysis. And for this AI engine that's now incorporated in our tool to do that, that's, a couple hours a week of time savings for us, and multiply that over, every week we have to deal with patching. That's a huge time saver for us. But that was an AI service that was incorporated in one of the line of business applications that we use that's hugely time saving for us. And I think that's what especially SMBs, lower middle market companies should be looking for is vendors that are on the cusp of incorporating these AI solutions to make their software more usable and useful to their clients.
you actually head on addressed the last question that I wanted to ask you, Nathan, which was about competitive advantage. And as our time grows short here, I know that 50 minutes goes quickly. What I was interested in is identifying how middle market companies that are successfully deploying AI, what separates those companies from the ones that are struggling with this to create a competitive advantage. And what I think I just heard you say was look at vetted solutions from your trusted providers. And if you understand where your people are spending their time, then it's going to be a slam dunk to know which levers to pull and which tools to utilize. Is that a fair summary of what you just said there?
Yeah, I think that's a perfect summary. Going back to, basic, the idea of lean office, that came from lean manufacturing and really identifying what tasks are taking, a lot of time that are repetitive or maybe not value added to the end solution. If businesses can look at areas of their business operations that have repetitive tasks that need to be done, but can be automated some way, especially if AI can come into that solution, that's where they're going to see the biggest bang for the buck quickly. And if their existing vendors, their trusted providers, have those type of solutions, that's even a better, slam dunk to get, immediate ROI on this type of investment.
Right. Are there any other recommendations that you would blanket make or blanket advice that you would provide to C-suite executives, leaders of middle market organizations that want to leverage AI within their business unit or within their business as a whole? I want to see if we can leave folks with maybe one takeaway that we didn't uncover here yet today, Nathan.
I think having a champion inside your organization I think with I recommend this for any new solution deployment. Having somebody that, takes this as their most important task to understand how AI can work inside the organization is where executives can find the best bang for the buck too, is somebody that's going to run with this. It could be the executive themselves, or it could be, an admin assistant, or somebody that's, just an employee inside the organization. But having somebody that's really excited about it and finding these areas of performance increase, and then, having specific projects around those to incorporate that in. But having somebody that's really excited about it, that's going to run with it, that's going to lead to, some serious adoption inside the organization.
Yeah. Your comments there also remind me of something you said earlier in our conversation about getting the folks that are going to be using these tools at a high level and overseeing others into a mastermind group or into some type of peer learning cohort that's focused on this specific to their position. So I would think that that would be the champion that you want in those areas as well.
For sure.
All right. Nathan, this was fantastic. I learned a lot today. I hope our listeners learned a lot as well. For anyone in listener land that wants to learn more about you, your work, the work of your organization, maybe they want to take flying lessons with you. I don't know. We didn't have time to unpack that. How could they get in touch with you or your organization? What's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so you can look me up on LinkedIn. My Nathan Whittacre, and my last name is spelled Whittacre, those that are listening and not viewing. And the company is Stimulus Technologies. You can find us at stimulustech.com.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciated your time today, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thanks for your time.
Thanks, Chad. It's great to be here.
You bet. All right. For our listeners out there, thank you all for tuning in once again to AI for the C-Suite, where we're committed to helping middle market leaders thrive in the exponential age. If you found value in today's discussion, please be sure to subscribe to our podcast, follow us on all the socials, and visit our site, aiforthecsuite.com. Join us next time as we continue to unlock the potential of AI for your organization. And until then, keep your algorithms running, your leadership evolving, and your AI in check. Take care, everybody.